Hello, I am an old fart, and I have a guilty pleasure. I like knives. I'm not an expert or an official representative of anything, I just like knives. I have a collection of small folding pocket knives, and you're joining me on an occasional look at one of the knives in the collection. A few weeks ago, I ran off the end of the backlog of the decades-old collection, and we're now seeing things just at the rate that either new knives happen or I think of new excuses for making up a video. This is a new acquisition, in fact a new knife that just was quite recently announced on the market, and I liked the sound of it, so I took a grab at it. This is a Benchmade Weekender. So I'm just going to take it off for a second. Where did this come from? Well, it has been pointed out that I don't ever talk about Swiss Army knives, and I have a few. Who doesn't, right? There's one of these things that just accumulate in your lives. There's by no means all of them. They just accumulate in your lives. Who doesn't have a few of those, and who doesn't like them, right? It's just so handy to have a multi-tool in your pocket. You never know when you might need one of these things. So I like that. I like having a multi-tool, and so I have some Swiss Army knives. But what I actually collect is folding knives, and the Swiss Army knives are not actually very good knives. The blade steel is ambiguous, it's very thin, it doesn't hold an edge well. It's not actually something that interests me very much as a knife. So then this came out. So this is, a respected manufacturer, Benchmade, who knows how to make knives, saying they're coming out with a knife that's sort of, Swiss Army knife-ish in a way, in that it's got more than one blade. And it's a multi-tool. It's got another tool built into it, a bottle opener. And so I thought, Swiss Army knife done right. Better try that. So I ordered one, and here it is. So formally, this is a new knife, a new offering from Benchmade. It is called the Weekender. I forgot to look up the Benchmade part number for it, but Google is your friend. At present, it's available only in two finishes. This one, which is the canvas natural micarta scales, and there's also a gray G10 scale option available. Mechanism. So it is a traditional slip joint, a two-blade traditional slip joint. There is a larger clip point blade and a smaller drop point blade. And unlike, again, Swiss Army knives, now there's the large blade on this Swiss Army knife, and the small blade is very small, and I've never really figured out what that was supposed to be for. These are useful sized, sturdy blades. And there is on this knife also a bottle opener. More on that in a while. It's a true slip joint. There is a back spring. You can see it operating there. And there's a half stop. And there are through nail nicks for opening. Being a true traditional slip joint, not a lockback, so it is a non-locking knife, nothing but the spring holding it in that position. That means if you're in one of the places in the world where locking blades are a problem, this should be okay. So let's talk through some of the specification. I don't usually do multi-blade knives, but I'll just open the larger blade, and we'll talk about the size as though that was the knife. So configured that way, the size is 179 millimeters, which is about 0.97 pocket calculators. Seems to be a fairly standard size. Comparison to some other things. Well, I usually compare knives to the mini griptilian, so it's a little longer, half a centimeter longer than the mini griptilian. Since it's sort of a Swiss Army knife, it might make sense to compare to that. So my favorite Swiss Army knife is this one. This is the Alox Pioneer. 165 millimeters, 179, so noticeably larger than the Swiss Army knife in every dimension, including the width of the blade. So do I have anything that's the same size? And the one I found is this, the also Benchmade, the Mini Freak, is the same length. Again, as you can see, different geometry, but the same length. So it's in that category. That's the size. The weight, 65 grams, which is fairly light. And it's funny, it seems heavier because it's beefy. To have room for two blades, it's quite thick. And so just because you're holding something really noticeable in your hand there, it seems heavy. Put it on a scale and it's not. 65 grams. The mini griptilian is 79. Sorry, that's not the mini griptilian. The mini griptilian is 79, so it's actually a fairly light knife. So the blades. Well, first of all, there are two, so we'll talk about both of them. And as I just move things around here, because I forgot to put my stuff within reach there. So there are two blades. The larger blade is a clip point. The smaller blade is a drop point. And with so much belly and drop, it's almost a spear point. Like you have to look at it carefully to decide that that's a drop point, but they call it a drop point, and so will I. And the blades are S30V steel with a stone wash finish, so a nice steel, not one of the modern, oh my god, super steels, but a pretty darn good steel and a stone washed finish. The body is a steel underframe, not titanium, and micarta scales. Clip? No, there is no clip. And there is no lanyard hole, so there is no way to have this be anything except a in-pocket knife. For ambidextrousness for my left-handed friends, of course, being a nail nick slip joint, it is fully ambidextrous. There's just literally no difference between the two sides as far as the blades go. The bottle opener is, of course, on one side only. And manufactured, Benchmade are US made, is manufactured in Oregon. I know there are some people who care about that. I don't. So US made. So there's a lot to like about this knife. It is very nostalgic feeling. It's beefy. With the two blades of different designs, it feels like a camping knife. And it reminds me of my Boy Scout knife from years ago. So it's not an office knife, but as a weekend in your pocket knife, it just has a nice, comfortable, nostalgic feeling. The mechanism is great. It's an easy, reliable slip joint. It is not too difficult to open. Good tension, good half stop, good lock. But you do need to remember, it's a non-locking knife. Those old childhood warnings back from the days of my Boy Scout knife to, be careful to only cut in this direction and don't back it out under pressure or it'll close on your hand, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. Those warnings apply. Another nice thing I like a lot as a slip joint, as compared to most slip joints, I think all Swiss Army knives, this is maintainable. Those are not rivets. They are tiny number 6 Torx screws. So you can actually take this knife apart to clean it, lubricate it, and maintain it. And not being able to do that is one of the reasons I don't care for the Swiss Army knives. So thank you for that, Benchmade. Micarta scales are very comfortable to hold. These are not mirror polished. They have a texture to them. So again, it seems suitable for a camping knife. Your hands might be wet or dirty. Good, comfortable grip. And of course, micarta will develop a patina over time. So it will become personal. Like all that. I think it's a handsome knife as an appearance goes. The micarta is part of that. The classic blade shape is part of that, and a nice little touch. There's no reason they had to do this, but those anodized colored rings around the pivot screws. So they're just a little boop of color there that just adds some visual interest, probably cost them a few cents to do, and I really appreciate that. I like the blades. They're both shapes I like. I really like drop point blades. And a clip point blade on a traditional pocket knife seems appropriate too. The steel is good. S30V is not outstanding steel, but it is very much in the okay category. Way better than the mysterious, undisclosed, probably 440 series steel in the Swiss Army knives. And the stone-washed finish on the blade is nice. It looks good. It's a good match for the micarta, and it doesn't fingerprint, or at least not very drastically. So you can handle this knife without feeling like you're messing it up, like all that. For cutting, it's a great cutter. This is, the main blade, good shape and a good size for cutting wood, sharpening sticks, cutting open Amazon boxes, letter opener, and the smaller blade for more detailed work. Again, I don't really know why two blades and when you'd use one over the other. I suppose there would be awkward circumstances when a smaller blade would be useful. But anyway, they're fine blades. You can't not mention that. I mean, this is a utility tool. It's got another tool, which is this. There's this little bottle opener in the end. So okay, that's cute. And how often do you need a bottle opener? I guess in the United States, I think most bottles are still bottle opener type tops, aren't they? In many other places in the world, most bottles are actually twist off, although they will still open with a bottle opener. And if I have one handy, I do tend to use it because it avoids, scraping the shit out of my fingers. But I think the main reason to put a bottle opener in this is to put it in the Swiss Army knife-like multi-tool category. This is clearly a utility tool, not a weapon. And I like that it helps it to make that mental shift. Another thing I'll mention that I like, not a big deal, as most Benchmade knives, it does come with a little cloth slip. I don't have it within arm's reach here, but when a knife has no pocket clip and it's meant to sit in your pocket, I usually complain if it doesn't come with a slip, so that it doesn't get messed up by rubbing on my key. So this comes with a cloth slip. I don't really think the Benchmade cloth slips are meant for in-pocket use. They're more like a storage presentation bag. Almost didn't mention the slip, but it does come with a little piece of cloth. A few things I'll mention under the don't like heading. First of all, a bottle opener. I'm glad it has an extra tool in it. Where the hell is it? There it is. If I was going to have one extra tool, I probably wouldn't pick a bottle opener. Or even if I was, in all the other knives I have here, all the knives I have that have bottle openers, the bottle opener is an integrated part of some other tool, in this case a flathead screwdriver. This thing, which is only a bottle opener, just seems to be a missed opportunity. It could have been more. Oh well. The small blade, I'll mention the blades. The big blade is beautiful. It's very nicely sharp. It's good steel. It's symmetric. The small blade is not symmetrically ground. Again, Benchmades do tend to have this. I assume it's machine ground, and the centering wasn't perfect. So it's 15 degrees on one side and 19 on the other side. Quite non-symmetrical. Does that matter? Mainly no. In terms of cutting, of course not. It'll cut things. It matters when you go to sharpen it, because if you sharpen on a guided system, this one I can't use the guide. However I set it, it'll be wrong on one side. So when I go to sharpen this, I'm going to have to reprofile the blade. I'll either grind the 19 side to 15 or the 15 side to 19, or maybe reprofile both of them, meet in the middle, 17 and a half, something like that. But it's going to be work the first time I have to sharpen this knife. It's partly reduced by the fact that there are two blades. One of them is symmetrical. I'll tell you a story. Just the other day. At night, not long before bed, I had cut down some Amazon boxes and they were sitting in the garage. And I was lying in bed, tossing and turning, and I was having trouble getting to sleep. And I realized what was going on. I had cut a box with the small blade. And there I was lying in bed and I was doing geometry in my head. I was trying to figure out. So the bevel isn't symmetric. Is that reflected in the cut on the cardboard? Are the two cardboard edges beveled because the blade was? Or by the time the cut has finished, is the cardboard square edged? I was really worried about that as I lied in bed, tossing and turning, because what I was worried about is, what if somebody breaks into my house and discovers that cut cardboard and measures the bevels and sees that they're not even? How would I ever sleep again? How would I forgive myself if some stranger broke into my house and discovered uneven bevels on my cut cardboard? That was really bothering me. So anyway, I took quick, decisive action. I got out of bed, went back downstairs, and I recut the cardboard with this blade, which I know to be symmetric. And then the strips that I cut off, I burned them so that any evidence that might have been in the asymmetric edges was gone. Then I was able to sleep. And I will be more careful that Anytime I'm cutting down cardboard before bed, I'll make sure that the finishing cuts are done with the symmetric blade. And when I eventually get around to resharpening this blade, I will reprofile this one so that that doesn't happen again. So, but there was a brief crisis there. Anyway, that's a lot to like and not much to dislike. Let's go through that in terms of my internationally unknown knife rating system. How about NTGK, non-threatening gentleman's knife? Well, for non-threatening, we'll do well. The mechanism is very non-threatening. Slip joints are just non-threatening by definition. You have to open it with two hands. There's no way to flick it open. There's no way to make somebody think it's a switchblade. And any traditional looking slip joint invokes a feeling of nostalgia. You bring this out in the office and somebody sees it and they will say, oh, my grandpa had a knife like that. Not, oh my God, why are you carrying a weapon? Being Swiss Army knife-ish, i.e. the bottle opener, it's clearly a tool carried mainly for its tool nature, probably carried mainly for the bottle opener, not a weapon. So good for non-threatening. I can't think of anything bad. I'd give it an A+ as non-threatening. As a gentleman's knife, good news, well, the pocket slip is a small mark in its favor, I guess. Makes it slightly pocket-friendly. But there's some bad. As a gentleman's knife, it's big, it's thick, chunky, not particularly exotic materials. Steel, not titanium. Micarta is okay. No pocket clip, no way to ride it on your pocket, no slip, so not very pocket-friendly. It really is a blue jean knife, not a dress pants knife. I'd give it only a B as a gentleman's knife, but A+ for non-threatening, B for gentleman's knife. I will give it a A as an NTGK. Maybe a B+, but I think I'm in a good mood today. I'll give it an A. How about an KN rating for what will my knife nerd friends think? Well, the pros is okay materials. S30V is a respected steel. Micarta is really nice. Some knife nerd friends in the United States will appreciate that it is US made. It is basically, a Swiss Army knife done right. And I think most of my friends will appreciate that. The cons, well, some knife nerds just inherently don't like slip joints. You can't flick it. You can't play with it. And in the case, in this one, really no way to open it one-handed. Some knife nerds won't like that. I'll give it a B as a knife nerd rating. And as a cut myself rating, I'm going to say A+. Okay, A because I haven't cut myself on it, and A+ because I think slip joints are just inherently safe. And it doesn't feel like I'm likely to ever cut myself on it, unless I'm really stupid. So we'll give it an A+ as a CMR. And that brings us to the end of this new product. Benchmade Weekender, a nice basic camp knife. Folder, not too big when it's folded, sits in your jeans, and a great camp knife for shaving, kindling, cutting food, small scale whittling, probably what this one would be for, and opening bottles, if that is still a thing. Again, as I said before, it's sort of like a basic Swiss Army knife, but with known good blade material. So I wonder if this indicates that Benchmade is going to get into more complex multi-tool Swiss Army knife competitor type knives. I would be interested in those, Mr. Benchmade, if you pursue that line of reasoning. Anyway, a really fine weekend knife that I'm really glad to have. So well done, Benchmade. Thanks for following along. See you again when something else happens. Bye-bye.